This happened when I was at college studying acting. I exercised regularly, doing yoga, tennis, and most of all, running. My favorite places to run were on the beach and in the woods as I loved nature and being alone. All my friends had boyfriends, and I was single at the time, so I felt a little lonely. One day, after I logged onto Instagram and saw that someone had sent me a message, I checked out his profile. His name was Mason. According to his bio, he was a football player at a college near mine. His photos consisted of him playing football, hanging with his friends, and he had a muscular build but also a little bit chubby. Eventually, I decided to accept his request, but I just ignored lots of DMs from him and went about my day. Later at lunch, my friends pushed me to start a conversation with Mason, and I did. And turns out we got along with each other well. We talked about fitness, movies, books, and college, a lot of common things. I told him about running in the woods and on the beach, and he told me I was cute and had a good body. He had also asked me if we could meet sometime. He seemed nice, but I was unsure. A couple of days later, I went out for a run around 6 in the morning. Although it was an early morning, outside it was really hot, so I wore a sports crop top and shorts. I was confident with my body anyway. As I went outside, I noticed there was a black car parked outside. I looked closer and could see someone looking at me. And when I left the woods at the same place where I went in, I noticed the same black car was parked nearby. I was scared. I started running back to my dormitory. As I looked back, I noticed the car wasn't following me. I calmed down a little bit and thought maybe that wasn't the same car. When I went back to my dorm, the black car wasn't there and I felt safe. I had a shower, changed, and got ready for the first lesson. I checked Instagram and saw that Mason had messaged me. He told me he wanted to wrestle me. I thought nothing of it and just texted back, "Sounds fun," with a winky face. As I was just about to leave my dorm for the first lesson, he messaged me again, asking to meet me at his dorm at his college and that he wanted to meet me because he loved me. I felt bad as I wasn't interested in a relationship. I sent him a message back telling him that I wasn't interested in it and just wanted to stay friends. Throughout the rest of the day, Mason didn't message me back. I started to feel bad, but I thought I'd wait a couple of days to message him back to ask if he was okay. The next morning, I went for my daily run. I put on my crop top and shorts and went outside. The black car wasn't around at my dorm and neither was it outside the woods, so I felt safe. I ran through the woods. It was hot and I had already run quite a bit. I ran along this trail and no one was around me. That was until a figure jumped out from behind a tree, a meter in front of me, shouting, "Surprise!" It was Mason. I asked him what he was doing and how he found me. He said that he became impatient and just wanted to meet me. He had parked his car nearby. "So we could go on a date," he said. I was sure it was the same black car as before, and I was surprised and pretty nervous. I told him it was a little weird to just surprise me like this, but he ignored me and walked up close to me. He told me I was so pretty, and he touched my cheek. I felt uncomfortable and told him, "Sorry, Mason. You're a nice guy, but I'm not interested in a relationship." I tried to push him away, telling him to leave me alone. And that's when he wrapped his arms around my waist and started squeezing me. He was very strong, and it was so tight, it hurt a lot. I told him to get off of me and tried to push him off again, but he was so much stronger than me. He squeezed much tighter. I was in pain and couldn't breathe. I couldn't even shout for help. Mason started trying to kiss and even lick me as he was crushing me. I kept on struggling. Eventually, I felt myself passing out as I was dizzy and started to black out. In desperation, I bit down on Mason's nose and scratched at his eyes. He said, "Let go of me, bitch," and pushed me down as he held his face. As I got my breath back, I got up and started sprinting out of the woods. Finally, I got to college and told my friends what happened, and then explained it to the police. I wanted to press charges and a restraining order on him. They told me they'll investigate it as soon as possible. I blocked Mason on Instagram as well as Twitter and Facebook. He didn't follow me on either, but I blocked him just in case. The next time I heard about Mason was after his trial. It turns out that he was kicked out of his college for assaulting another girl a month before. The police also found out he had planned on kidnapping me, as he had a notebook about me and what he wanted to do with me and other women, which includes some of the vilest things. How he wanted to kill women in several different ways and violate the bodies afterward. He even wrote at length about how he wanted to squeeze a woman to death with his arms. I threw up when I found out. Though it may sound unlikely, it is possible to murder someone by squeezing them hard and long enough, preventing them from breathing and causing asphyxiation. Considering how strong he was and how small I am, I'm certain he could have killed me. As far as I know, he's still in prison or in a mental institution. Good riddance. After what happened, I started training in martial arts and started lifting weights. I've never spoken to people I don't know on social media, and I never went into the woods alone again. Sometimes I still think about what happened to me and how it could have ended differently. I do not doubt that Mason could have squeezed me to death. What I want to know is what he would have done with me afterwards.
One, the man with a fret saw. The house I used to live in was a kind of detached house form. Although the house was an open place, it would not be possible to break in even if someone climbed over the wall if the door was locked. However, the incident just happened one summer. Being tired of the hot weather, I just put a chain on the door and went to sleep without even thinking of an uninvited guest's invasion. Not long after, a weird sound began to be heard from somewhere at night. At the moment I opened my eyes to the sound, I saw a man cutting our door chain with a small fret saw in front of the door. I, who was terrified at that time, screamed loudly, but he didn't stop sawing. Surprised by my scream, my parents and older brother ran outside, and my brother, who was grabbing a golf club in one hand, yelled to the man, "What are you, man? Do you have a death with?" Then the man smiled and said, "If this gets cut, you guys all die." Fortunately, the man was arrested by the cops, who arrived quickly, and we didn't suffer big damage, though. But the memory of the day still scares me up to this day. 2. My dear, were you scared? I once had a big sleep paralysis while I was sleeping. Fortunately, I was able to wake up soon after, and I rushed to my mom's room with fear, and she hugged me. "My dear, were you scared?" Mom said to me like this as she patted my back, and I seemed to be relieved by her voice at first. However, I suddenly felt something was wrong. My mom began to ask the same question over and over again, scratching me on the back with her fingernails slowly but continuously. "My dear, were you scared? Were you scared? Were you scared?" 3. My missing friend. Today I went to my friend's funeral. It was really heartbreaking, maybe because he died absurdly with a month left before his marriage. So he was living alone in a studio apartment. He told me and other friends that he will travel to Europe by himself for a while before his wedding. When he said he wouldn't be able to contact us for a month, we all thought he was enjoying his travel. However, I felt something strange that he didn't come back after the day he had mentioned. We all felt anxious, so another friend ended up visiting his house, and he was found dead in the bathroom. It turns out that while he went in the bathroom alone, his big mountain bike fell on the floor and it didn't open, and my friend was locked up for a month and dead like that. Even now, my tears still flow with the sadness lingered in my heart. I hope you guys, whoever read this, always be careful. 4. The woman in the restroom. Our school went on a trip to China for a vacation. We were supposed to go to one hotel as our lodging, but due to traffic problems, the reservation was canceled, having communication problems with the hotel. All the teachers were freaked out, and we had to gather at a nearby McDonald's waiting for about 2 hours. Meanwhile, our teachers were looking around for the other hotels, and there were available rooms in an old mansion-style hotel run by a Korean. Anyway, we were able to explain quickly since the owner was Korean and ended up staying for about a day. We unpacked our stuff, washed up, and fell asleep. But one of my friends kept waking me up that night. "Hey, can you go to the restroom with me?" However, since the hotel, which was different in structure from a regular hotel, it was difficult to find a restroom, and I was afraid to walk around this night, so I refused and just continued sleeping. The next morning, while we were checking out, she was constantly asking a question at the counter, and her face was turned deadly pale, so I asked her what she was asking about. "Friend, I went to the restroom alone yesterday, you know. It was too dark and scary, but I really had to pee. So I ended up finding the restroom and was sitting inside, and then I heard a Chinese woman said something outside. So I was thinking, oh, the other guest is going to use the restroom too. But then she only repeated one word, Zai Ming, like this. My poor friend got scared and thought for a long time whether to go out or not. Finally, when she ran out at once and there was no one there, she returned to the room in fear. After she calmed down a little, she then started to search for the word that she heard just before through the internet. But the results did not come out, so she had no choice but to sleep again. Eventually, she knew the word's meaning that she had heard in the restroom only after she went to the computer the next day and asked. What she said was, "On top of you." The sound from the upstairs. My aunt once moved out to the apartment. However, the location was rural, and the apartment was constructed around there, so it was totally empty at that time any residents were coming in. Anyway, after my aunt and uncle had moved in, they began to hear footsteps from upstairs every day at dawn that seemed to be someone was walking around. It's not like just a few times. They heard it for the whole month. My aunt gradually started to get mad, so she ended up visiting upstairs, but there was no one in the apartment. Then she visited the security guard and asked, "Excuse me, is there a person living in that apartment?" "Well, it's probably an empty apartment yet." My mom told her that the thief, the beggar, or the stray cat might have come inside. So the next day, my aunt visited the guard again and told him about this. And he eventually went upstairs that night and searched the whole inside, but there was no sign of forced entry to the apartment. Nevertheless, the running sounds from upstairs didn't seem to stop and bothered my aunt and uncle. And my aunt, who felt something strange, ended up calling a shaman. When the shaman arrived at the apartment, she took a look around inside and calmly told her like this, "You must leave here. Move out to another place." "What are you talking about?" Being dumbfounded, she asked back as soon as she heard it. However, after hearing the shaman's next words, she changed her mind, and they eventually ended up leaving the apartment. So this is what the shaman actually said. "This is the sound of ghosts wandering around. But the problem is, it's not from the upstairs. This sound is from your ceiling, and it's walking around, hanging upside down." The amusement park. One day, one of the employees was preparing to close the ride in the amusement park. Then he saw two people coming in. "I guess you guys are the last." The staff led them to their seats, and the two, who appeared to be a couple, sat in a friendly atmosphere and said, "Oh, we are celebrating our 100th day anniversary. Congratulations. What kind of anniversary is it? Date? Operating the ride, he also said pleasingly, and at that moment when he turned around, the woman said to him, "No, the anniversary of our death." He immediately got goosebumps and blankly looked back at the place where the ride left. What kind of prank is that? However, to his surprise, there was no one on the ride when it came back. And when he checked the CCTV again, he only saw himself staring into the air, greeting and talking to himself, and operating the ride.
About 5 years ago, my friends and I were at the school, and we were joking about sneaking onto the roof after we noticed a ladder that was leading up to it. We all kept daring each other to do it, but no one actually said yes. Then someone dared me, so I said, "Sure, I'll do that. Meet me here tonight at 10 p.m. Everyone seemed surprised, but in reality, I was hoping that the ladder would be gone by that night so I wouldn't have to do it. I didn't want to do that, actually. After that night, it was about 9:45 p.m., and then I snuck out my window and headed over to the school again. I crossed my fingers that the ladder wouldn't be there, but unfortunately, once I got there, all but one of my friends was already waiting and the ladder was still there. One of my friends snickered and told me, "You have to stay there for at least 5 minutes as well." I then sighed and said, "Fine." I really didn't want to get caught and suspended, so I walked over slowly, hoping that something would happen to us. However, the place around us was so quiet. I reached the ladder and stepped onto it. It wobbled a little bit at first because it wasn't attached to the building. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, then continued to climb. The higher I climbed, the more and more the ladder was unstable, which made me worried, but I made it to the top anyhow. I sat down on the roof and looked down to see my friends, but when I scanned the street, I couldn't see them at all. In confusion, I was about to shout out to find them, then I heard a loud bang, so I stood up and rushed to the edge of the roof. The ladder had fallen. I looked up trying to find my friends and said, "Gee guys, this ain't funny. Where are y'all?" My voice echoed through the dark in an empty street. The night was cold and I was getting really worried. The school wasn't that tall, but it was still a long way from the roof to the ground. I scanned the street one last time, hoping they would reveal themselves. Then I saw something. Those red eyes were staring at me about 100 feet from me. I froze. What the heck is that? Showing its teeth, the thing slowly smiled, and the streetlight suddenly went out. Everything was pitch black. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or not. Then the lights turned back on, and I could finally see that creature hiding behind another lamppost. It was close to me. Whenever the lights went out again and were turned back on, it came much closer. When it finally reached the final lamppost, I was shaking so hard. I tried to walk backward, but then accidentally stumbled, almost falling from the roof. However, I managed to stop myself. So I looked down, searching around everywhere, but the creature had disappeared. I thought maybe it's just a nightmare, but I was wrong. I could feel something was staring at me. I slowly turned my head, and there it was. That thing was standing, towering over me. The creature was at least 10 feet tall, and it had bloodshot eyes and the most evil smile I've ever seen. I tried to scream, but no noise came out. It growled at me and stepped forward. I guess I had no choice. I jumped off the roof, not realizing I was right next to the edge. When I fell off, I hit my head really hard against the ground. However, despite the pain, I jumped to my feet. I ran away from the building as fast as I could, glancing back at the roof to see if that thing was gone. Then I noticed that it was standing in front of a window in the school, still staring at me. I had to stop turning my head. I couldn't put those red eyes out of my mind during the time I was coming back home. When I finally made it back to my house, I ran inside. Of course, my parents yelled at me for being out late at night, but I wasn't really listening because I was so scared. So I just apologized and then ran up to my bed. I had to hide under my covers for the whole night, too afraid to sleep. But the most horrible thing was what happened the next day. The next morning, when I argued with my friends about the previous night, leaving me alone, they were all confused and claimed they never went there. Then, what were the messages from my friends that they were coming? And who were they that I saw yesterday? I couldn't say anything. Bye.